you check the children. Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Howdy folks, welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Robert Duell.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here, and this is another one that is not a Patreon request, everybody. This is none other than Seoul Station. That is a prequel to Train to Busan, which many consider one of the best zombie films of the past
Hella
decade.
good.
Damn good, in fact,
Yep.
man. I mean, it had heart, it had crazy, frantic zombie mayhem, and you know, just claustrophobic enclosed space and stuff. Train to Busan is badass, but the same director, and I can't remember if he was a co-writer, but he was definitely the director on Train to Busan. He actually wrote and directed this prequel. The guy has a background in animation, which he was doing before segueing into more live action stuff. And the reason we're finally getting around to doing this is because Peninsula is coming out later this year. I know it's scheduled for an October 2020 release in Korea, but then again, we know release dates are all being fluctuated around in whatever crazy manner because of the weird world that we're in the midst of right now. But we all respectively got around to finally watching it, and so here Robert and myself are overall impressions. I'm actually gonna kick it to you. I watched it a little more recently, but you know, despite the little bit of time removal and stuff, what did you think about this animated mayhem?
I definitely liked it, and this is actually a rewatch for me. I had watched it originally when it first premiered on Netflix a couple years back and everything.
It's like 2016, 2017,
Something like that. Yep.
somewhere around there.
Somewhere around there and everything. And like I enjoyed it then. Now it's like I enjoyed it a little bit more, but I still definitely feel why I never went back and revisited it. I would say it was more so a lot I would have to do with animation style.
Oh, really? You're
I
not
think
a big
that
fan of it?
It was it wasn't as fluid as I like.
Oh.
I'll leave it just briefly on that one.
Yeah,
overall
for
impressions, I did like it. That's about it.
Okay. Yeah, this was the first time watch for me. I didn't see it initially because you know how many times when they have like what they're seemingly grooming to be a popular franchise and they're like, oh, here's the tie-in animated prequel spin-off, you know, flesh out.
Doesn't always work out.
Whatever backstory, whatever. I mean, they've done it with so many different films that I like in the realm of genre, you know, whether it's superhero, whether it's like video game adaptations, you know, horror, sci-fi, whatever the hell it may be. Although I did like the Dante's Inferno. I liked what they did with Deep Space. I think they did a couple of those films as well. That was a survival, or Dead Space?
Dead Space.
Dead Space. That's
Dead
what I'm
Space.
thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, what is
Star Trek.
Yeah, but so that was my impression of this. I didn't even realize until I was about to watch it that this was actually written and directed by the same guy who did the film, and they both came out the same year from what it said on the IMDb. Yep. So I was impressed, you know?
Yeah, this movie came out, I think, just a couple months after Train to Busan released. I think at least over here.
At least here in the U.S., because I
Yep.
know it came out a few years before in South Korea. But
Yep.
I actually was very impressed. I thought it was interesting how it was another father-daughter dynamic. Different kind of father, as without getting super spoilery.
Loosely,
it's interesting though. It's
loosely,
interesting
yeah,
though in that regard. And, you know, they give some distinction about the true nature of the association, but and yet it still didn't really give that much information as to how the virus started.
No, basically it was just
it's still kind of scant on that, but
where it started in the streets and everything. And like again, it started any of the plagues is always starting with the homeless people.
Yeah.
And everything. And man, they had
breeding cesspool of disease and stuff like that. They're like human pigeons.
Yes, and they had a real distaste for the homeless in this film.
They did, yeah.
It was pretty gross watching it.
Yeah, but so I guess overall impressions, I actually like the animation side, but then again, I would never consider myself a connoisseur of anime or just, you know, the animated style in general. I watch everything from weird old 70s stuff like Wizards to, you know, later stuff like Parasite, which, you know, Cecil had all of us watching, which I think had watched already leading up to this. But I don't watch as much animated stuff as I would like to, so I'm definitely not as well versed in what looks better and stuff. I was really more so compelled by anything, by the storytelling and by the voice acting. I thought all of that was very spot on, very compelling, and so I was definitely into that, and that was enough for me. But I could understand maybe some visual critiques if that's the way you felt.
Now, did you watch this in the dubbed version?
I did not watch the dub version. I watched the subtitled, which is typically what I prefer. I mean, there's very occasional instances where I watch the dub. Like I watched the dub with DBZ. I watched the dub with Vampire Hunter D and oh boy, I don't know, Bebop and
Yep.
stuff like that. Berserk, I watched dub for that, but I mean sometimes the voice acting is very good. I know with like Akira, for instance, there's a couple different dubs. There's the 80s dub, and then there's the re-release dub,
Yep.
and I like the original dub better. So, but yeah, for properties that I haven't watched when I was younger and I was more okay with subtitles, I typically, that's the only time I watch the dub. Otherwise, I'm reading, man, and I'm fine with it.
I got you. No,
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Subs over dubs.
But as far as storytelling goes, I mean, it really begins with a homeless guy who, an older homeless guy who was like stumbling around at the very beginning. He looks afflicted by something. He's got some bite marks on his neck and, maybe another area or two of his body. And he basically collapses. He is found by a friend of his who keeps calling him bro, at least in the subtitling. He's like, my bro is sick. My bro, he's been bit. All this other stuff. And so he is desperately trying to seek out some help for this bro, which I'm assuming is just like a bro, a friend of his, so to speak, and just turning a blind eye, from person to person. He tries to go to like a homeless shelter, and he's gonna get his ass kicked for trying to bring in this truly sick person in there, and the guy is like, you're gonna make me sleep in the dew tonight because you're bringing in this bro of yours, blah blah blah. He tries going to the police station. He goes and eventually gets some painkillers and like an energy drink of sorts, and by the time he goes back, finds that guy is dead. He's crying. He runs to the police station, brings the police with him, and corpse is gone. So you know what's happening here. And that's the one story. And then the, I guess, main story, or it's not so much the B story, it's just like a, corresponding story.
It all ties in.
Yeah, it does. But we have this girl who, she's with kind of a slimy little computer cafe internet nerd type guy who's pimping her out, and it's the only way that they can make rent. He's not trying to work, and she obviously isn't trying to find other means of making money aside from what she had done before. There's friction between the two of them, and she gets mad at him and storms away. He ends up hooking up with her father, quotation marks there, and so it basically turns into the boyfriend and the father trying to find this girl who is just going throughout the city and trying to reconnect with them too, as Seoul is being overrun with zombies. And that's really the long and the short of it, I suppose, right?
Yeah, that's really it's just the prequel of what happened in the outbreak of at Seoul Station before Train to Busan.
Yeah, story though, I mean, did you like this sort of approach?
I did like it and everything, and especially too, like with the ending of what we got, it was very satisfying.
Yes, very much.
Very satisfying. But no, definitely even like the story dynamic and everything, because you have to start it out somewhere. So at least there were some points with the crappy characters, or like they had some redeeming moments.
They did. Even though they're definitely unsavory.
Oh yeah,
there was a essence of compassion, maybe
to a point, to a point, and everything like that. But like really, like most of the people in this movie, they're garbage people.
Relatively deplorable. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but no, like
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, aside from the lack of likability, aside from our lead lady, I still was captivated by a few of the people who helped her out along the way, and including, the old guy who, basically helps her like get under the security gate at that one particular point. And there's the older woman who runs at them, and you think she's a zombie, and turns out she just thinks that the two of them are like a love item, and she's all disgusted by them.
Too, plus when you see what the city's doing to contain this outbreak.
Yeah.
It's like
willing to kill.
Yeah, just mass murder. But again, in these situations, the sad thing is, like, it probably happened.
Yeah, that's how I think it would go down too, man. And even the disbelief from like law enforcement initially, like when our main lady and a few other people are at the police station and they lock themselves in the cell, and more zombies are starting to come in, and somebody's been bit that's inside the cell with them. And I mean, there are some tensely written scenarios, throughout this that I thought were incredibly effective, even early on, where the father and the boyfriend initially hook up, and they're seeing people in the apartment, and they're running at them, and they're stuck in one room, and then they're stuck in another room, and just him taking the head of the toilet and just beating the hell out of those two respective zombies, like bashing them over their heads. I mean, there's well written and orchestrated action, and I thought the characters were, even if they were unsavory, shites, they were still well developed. There's really only one very redeeming character who is. It's really about her arc of being abused and taken advantage
Basically,
of.
she does get her revenge.
Yeah.
In a sense. Like,
Yeah.
it's still sad. You knew it was going to happen.
Of course. Yeah.
But it was, like I said, it was very satisfying.
Yeah, the only thing I wasn't really satisfied about was the fact that, as we mentioned earlier, lack of a real origin for
where it came
this
from, whether it even just be like just a bacterial growth, something like that, whatever.
Yeah, connect some lines for us. Maybe
Yeah.
Peninsula will do that. I mean,
That would be
who
cool.
knows? Yeah.
I would hope at least. But at the same time, with like the zombie movies, half the time really doesn't need it.
Yeah,
You know,
And
we all
it's
know
about
there's
the
that
visceral scares
patient
and-
zero and everything. So
Yeah, it's around there somewhere. Voice acting though.
voice
I
acting
mean,
for what it was and everything, especially with.
since I didn't listen to the English dub, I mean, have you listened to the English?
I
dub
have
of
not
this?
actually.
Neither. Yeah.
So
neither of us can bear on that.
We're basically going with the original Korean voices. They were great.
Same. Yeah.
You could feel the emotion. There was actually a couple times like I did get choked up. I'm not going to tell you the scenes, but
I got choked up with dude crying about his bro being dead early on in the film.
no, there was one like later on.
Place.
There was one later on. It's like I was just like I knew it shouldn't have been like choked up. But it was kind of those one dumb little moments where I was kind of happy but sad at the same time.
Is
like,
it with scaling wall barricades sort
A
of
little bit.
because that was another one that got me.
little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit, but so what is it? We want to set over to.
Yeah, I mean, you said that you didn't like the style of animation based on the fluidity.
My biggest issue, like out of the whole with this anime, was the fluidity of it. It was very choppy in how it was presented and the movements. That's what kind of brought me out the most of this.
Interesting.
Other than that, like I did for the most part like the animation style. There could have been a little bit more detail personally, but I think the biggest issue was how it flowed.
Interesting. Yeah, I like the look of the zombies, and I mean, set and character, design, like the actual, the main people that we follow around through this. I thought they all looked fine enough. You know, I mean, but
there was always this great, like a bluish gray scale over everything that kind of bugged me as well.
So, like when the zombies are going into more of their full running rage mode, the fact that it looked more of like a here and then here and then here, as opposed to like just a fluid, fast run movement.
Yeah.
Because these aren't your typical like staggery zombies for the most part. They do have fast instances of like pouncing and even like borderline running at times and stuff. I mean, just running at cages and fences and barricades and all this different stuff. But I don't know. I like the look of it, but in hindsight, with you making that mention, I can definitely at least attest to that.
Yeah, it's definitely not one of my favorite animes personally, and I don't have any really need to go back and even rewatch it.
Well, I mean, there's some comic books and animated films in general where you watch or look at specifically for the art because it's that beautiful, and then there's others where the strength of the storytelling is what really gets you there. And so this would probably at least be for me strength of storytelling in comparison. World building.
Exactly, because again, that being that prequel film, you get a little bit more on the world and everything of like, okay, where did it come from and everything like that in the beginning. But at the same time, there still wasn't enough, I felt, in story wise to really need it to be presented in the series.
Yeah, it felt like something that would be direct to video or a VOD or something, as opposed to something that would warrant a theatrical release and really be a part, like stand on the same level as the like live action film.
Personally, I still feel like we could have actually just done without this movie.
Oh, really? Wow, bold. Okay.
We really didn't need it.
No,
like we really didn't need it.
Additional marketing tie-in, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's basically what it is, because just a little extra money and everything like that. Because I think they had like a little comic thing. I think that they did with it.
Maybe they did. Yeah,
something like that. Sure. I might be thinking of something else.
Multimedia blitz, man. I mean, just as many tie-ins as possible. So, and especially for American audiences, if they're just trying to get them more into this. But as we mentioned earlier, everybody, Peninsula comes out, at least in Korea for the time being, in August of 2020. We don't have a set American release, but we did do a trailer reaction to Peninsula here on the Horror Show in the last couple of weeks. It's floating around in one of those multi-trailer reactions somewhere there, so it's one that I am definitely excited about. Are you stoked for Peninsula? Have you watched the trailer?
Oh, hell yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Give us more from this world. That's probably why I'm a little more forgiving of this than maybe Robert being more of an anime expert.
Give me the live action zombies from this world.
Yeah, and it's funny because this director, despite starting out initially in animation for many, many years, he's segued more so into live action stuff. He did a live action superhero film a few years ago, which was called Psychokinesis, that I'm kind of curious about checking out. And yeah, he's kind of veered more so into that realm. So yes, I don't know. It's cool to see a dual threat in his capabilities and talents and stuff. So yeah, I guess that's it, everybody.
Really about the short and sweet of that movie there.
Yeah, and there is kind of like a metal dirgy little bit of soundtrack in the background, like
a little bit and everything like that. But it wasn't
during the attack sequences.
Yeah.
But it's nothing to write home about, I guess. And
no, and like other than that, yeah. So like even like for story for sound and everything like that, and
I mean,
wasn't
crunching. And I mean, your typical kind of stuff that you would hear from like rage-infested, people hungry for flesh.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, I guess that'll do it, everybody. Gracias to everybody tuning into this. Make sure, if you haven't, to check out Train to Busan, because that, along with this, is also on Shudder. Now, we are not pimps for Shudder, but, nonetheless, bring it on if that is necessarily possible. And also patrons, right, Robin? We have our whole thing where people can tell us what to do.
Yeah. Everything's down in the description box below. All right, guys. Well, that pretty much about wraps it up for our review of Seoul Station.
Gracias, I'm Jaime and Fuego.
And I'm Robert Duell.
And until next time, Frag fans, remember,
Stay scared.